Welcome back, guys. We have another data mine today. Azur Lane is now collaborating with Senran Kagura New Link, a similarly degenerate mobile game, and today releases the event, which we'll go over today in detail. However, I am going to try and speed through this faster than normal. I do have a turkey to cook today. On that note, happy Thanksgiving to those in the States, and happy normal Thursday to everyone else. Alright, the name of this new event is called the Ninja Scrolls Azur Flash. It's going to bring us 7 new collaboration girls, 5 of which are SR, and 3 new gears. Before we get further into the event, let's talk about other updates coming. Coming at the start of the next month, we are going to be getting the newest challenge mode. This will be the Sagittarius chat frame. The boss will be Warspite. Here are some details about the boss fight. It will be heavy armor, clearly. Most importantly here, she will be having a charged attack on a timer. You just want to interrupt that, and you can give her more damage, and it can stack 20 times. Anyway, that will come out in a little bit over a week. Also coming out in a little bit over a week is Erebus META in the new form of the cruise missions. Kirov META will be coming about a week after that, but we do not have her data yet. We do have Erebus META data, so let's go over that now. Erebus META is the first battle monitor meta ship. Not expecting much. Battle monitors typically are terrible. Stat-wise, she lives up to that expectation. She is slightly better than her original form, but that's not saying much since battle monitors only have 2 battle gun shots instead of 3 like battleships. Although I'll take a 15% efficiency increase. She is a Cinders of Hope ship. That puts her in the meta subfaction with Algerie, Gneisenau, Queen Elizabeth, Fortune, Hunter, and La Gaston Lanier. Skill number 1 reads that she gets a 20% boost to her firepower and hit stat when the ship fires her main guns. There's a 60% chance that she heals the lowest HP ship in the fleet by 5%, and if it doesn't trigger, so 40% chance, then if the flagship is a meta faction ship, it gets 8% increase to its damage dealt for 10 seconds. So if you put her in the flagship, she's going to boost herself 8% if it triggers and it fails, but if it triggers properly, she's going to heal the ship with the lowest HP. So you can't necessarily guarantee which one you're going to get, but both effects are good. It would be nice to be able to determine that, but you know, this is a good effect. It's a good way to trigger when she has her main gun firing. Skill number 2, during combat, plus 20% damage dealt to enemies under 10% HP. I got pretty excited there because plus 20% damage is a lot, but to enemies under 10% HP, that's pretty meaningless unless you're talking about a boss fight, and battle monitors are particularly used for mob fleets because they have less oil costs, and you can give up some damage when you're fighting, like, you know, suicide boats and a bunch of the weaker mobs. So I don't particularly love that skill. It kind of counters usually what you're using battle monitors for. And then also every 20 seconds, there's a 70% chance she's going to trigger a special barrage. This scales on the skill level. This is very similar to her base form. And then like all meta ships, she's going to get an Operation Siren skill, which is going to allow her to deal self crit damage plus 8% to elites and boss fleets in Operation Siren. This is basically a collection only ship. She's bad and her oil efficiency is probably not worth it. There are better options for her there. So, you know, pick her up if you like her, and you need the fleet tech now because meta ships do that. All right, with that out of the way, let's get into the event, the Ninja Scrolls Azur Flash. Mind you, this event will bring 7 new characters, and all of them will get augment modules. You will be able to obtain these augment modules through the Ninja Scrolls mini event, so just play and complete the missions and you'll be able to get all of them. Also, because there are 5 SRs and rate ups are 2% and SRs are 7%, we cannot have 5 SRs in the gacha. So Homura is going to be in her own mini event called the Ninjutsu Dojo, which you can get her. She's one of the SRs, so she will be obtained in a separate version from the gacha. Event map wise, we are not looking at anything good for gear drops, so just get your points, go to T5, and get as many points as quickly as possible. That way you can use them in the event shop where you can get Ikaruga. She's the obtainable SR there. You can also get gear skins. They look like this. There will also be 3 new unique items in the shop. We'll talk about those later in the video. You will probably want those. And Murasaki is going to be obtainable through the milestones. So without further ado, let's get into the 7 new ships that are dropping today. Because all of them are going to be immediately getting easily obtainable augment modules, I'm going to be talking about the augment modules with the ship itself and just kind of taking them as together because you should just have the augment module with the ship. All right, let's start off with the SR light cruiser Asuka. Stat-wise, she looks like an above-average light cruiser. She's a little bit squishy. Her HP's a little bit low, and her evasion's not anything amazing, but she does have a main gun +1 and some pretty good efficiencies for her torpedoes and her main gun +1. And her firepower and torpedo stat are kind of like standard SR quality, like kind of San Diego, I guess, is similar firepower and also has a main gun +1. And her torpedoes are kind of like in that like Belfast Maid range. So those are decent. Those are pretty good. She's already got 90 luck too, and her augment module gives her another 9 luck, so she's going to be at 99 luck. That's actually pretty high. Additionally, her augment module is going to reduce the damage she receives by 10%. That's really going to help with her ability to survive, and +30 HP and +30 torpedo stat from her augment module is also going to be pretty nice here. Alright, skill number 1. At the start of the battle, for every Senran Kagura faction ship in your fleet, +15% crit damage. This stacks a maximum of 3 times. So she's guaranteed to get 15% boost from this because she counts herself, and if you have 2 other friends, she can get 45% increase to her crit damage. So that's kind of nice. It's actually a good chunk if she's critting. That's pretty good, especially if something gives her the ability to crit more. Also, every 12 seconds, all Senran Kagura faction characters will deal 10% more damage to enemies with the lowest HP, so only the one enemy. That's interesting, especially if you're bringing 2 of her friends, and obviously it counts herself, and it triggers every 12 seconds, so if you can get on rotation, that's kind of interesting, a nice boost there. This ship also fires a barrage. That barrage is going to scale off her firepower, torpedo stat, and her skill level, and the nice part about this barrage is it's probably going to be affected by the dealing more damage to the enemy with the lowest HP. So we're kind of going to kick them while they're down. Also, if there is only one enemy afloat when this skill is triggered, the barrage will always trigger critically. Okay, that works perfectly with the first part of this skill because now you're going to be dealing that +45% damage, hopefully, and it's guaranteed if you hit one enemy. One thing that's interesting about this though is a lot of times it's going to be hard to have only one enemy afloat. It's really only going to happen in boss fights. It's not going to happen in PvP. And even in the boss fights, it's going to be odd because a lot of times they'll spawn like little minions and that will deactivate this skill part. I don't know. It'd be interesting. There are certainly boss fights where it's only the boss showing up, and there are times where even in ones with the minions, you'll kill the minions and this will work, but it's interesting. Also, if the barrage defeats an enemy, then you fire the skill 2 barrage. This has a 10-second cooldown. All right, so let's move on to skill number 2, but basically it's going to fire a barrage. All right, skill number 2 is going to be upgraded by having the augment module on her. So we're going to read just the upgraded version just because you're probably going to have that. So she's going to get +15% firepower and torpedo stat. That's nice. At the start of the battle, if there are other Senran Kagura ships in the fleet, she's going to get a +15% evasion stat, and you're probably going to want to bring her friends. She seems like she is the faction buffer so far. When this ship takes damage to fall below 30% HP, she gets +10% evasion rate. So these 2 things are definitely helping with her survivability issue, at least stat wise. Also, she initiates a secret ninja barrage. I assume this is the barrage that skill 1 was talking about triggering as well. Additionally, also this barrage heals 15% of the damage dealt, so it's like a vampire barrage, and that's not going to be a ton of healing given the barrage probably isn't going to do a lot of damage, and 15% of that she's going to heal, but she is going to get a heal based on the damage she deals off this barrage. Also, once again, there's that if that one enemy unit is afloat, this barrage will always be critical, so that's gonna apply very nicely with the first skill. And if this barrage kills, then you additionally trigger thrice the first skill's barrage. So her first skill barrage triggers her second skill barrage, her second skilled barrage can trigger her first skill barrage. So just a lot of barrages. These barrages, if there's only one enemy, is going to crit, and those crits are going to have extra crit damage. Overall, Asuka is pretty decent. She's going to have a good chunk of damage. The one thing is, I think she's going to be handicapped by the fact she's going to need to be with her faction friends, and she's also going to want to only be fighting one enemy. So if you're fighting mobs, she's really bad for that. She's not amazing, like, blow your socks off, but that's a good thing for collab ships anyway, given they don't come back often, if ever. But overall, I think she is interesting. I like her so far. Let's move on to the next ship. The next ship is the SR heavy cruiser Ikaruga. She's She's going to be obtainable for a map drop as well as in the event shop. She is a torpedo heavy cruiser, very sad, and her stats are not very good. So stat wise, we are not too excited. She literally has less weapon efficiencies than Asuka, and she has about the same amount of gunfire. She's got a main gun +1 and torpedoes. So it's like interesting there. Her augment module is going to give her 6 luck, and every 20 seconds after the battle starts, she randomly reduces an enemy's firepower, torpedo stat, and aviation stat by 5% for 5 seconds. And then she's also going to get 32 firepower and 18 reload. That's interesting. I mean, so it seems like luck is going to be a big component of these augment modules here. And, it's a debuff of the enemy, but it's random, it's slow, it's a very minor amount, but it does decrease the damage they're going to be able to deal there. All right, stat wise, she doesn't look too good, but let's move into the skills. And her first skill is going to be upgraded by the augment module, so we're going to read the upgraded version. Every 25 seconds after the start of the battle, stop for 3 seconds and fire a barrage. So this is almost like a loading or a charged attack. She initiates an initial secret ninja barrage as well if the augment module is on her, and then during the stopped period she generates a barrier equal to 3% of her max HP. If the barrier is broken or the time expires, the 3 seconds, she fires the special barrage. So basically she's doing a charged attack. It's going to take 3 seconds. She's going to be stationary. She's going to get a shield to block that, but honestly she's going to hold everyone else hostage basically when you're running like a 3-person vanguard. Okay, I really don't love this skill at all, honestly. All right, skill number 2. Every 10 seconds after the start of the battle, she gets plus 10% hit stat and plus 10% reload stat for 5 seconds. Honestly, she could have just got 10% boost to both of those stats permanently, but okay, we're only going to get them 50% of the time. And then she's also going to trigger with an 80% chance to fire a torpedo barrage, so that's kind of nice. When this ship falls below 60% HP, she's going to reduce the damage she takes by 10%. She's going to increase her evasion by 15%. She's going to increase her firepower and torpedo stat by 10%, and this effect lasts the rest of the battle. It only triggers once, so you can't go back up over 60 and back down to kind of trigger it multiple times. The first time you trigger below 60%, she's going to get all of these buffs. At least 60% is actually a good chunk, like you'll trigger this in a general battle. Honestly though, this ship needs it. The stats aren't great, the skills aren't amazing. This ship is pretty bad. I would probably rate her collection only, and we'll have to see what the other ships bring, because I'm not particularly loving this to pair with Asuka. We'll see if there's something better to pair. Otherwise, oof, that makes Asuka worse because she's going to need some friends for her max buffs. All right, let's move on to the SR Submarine Homura, which you can get through the special event, not through the gacha. Stat-wise, she looks pretty decent. Her torpedo stat's kind of on par with that SR Submarine torpedoes, probably closer to the U-boats pre their skill buffs, so we'll see. She does give up a little bit of reload, but has some pretty high accuracy there. Also, I like the fact that she gets a nice boost to those efficiencies in her submarine torpedo in the first slot. Her augment module gives her 35 torpedo stat and 15 hit stat, the two most important, so she has a lot of accuracy, which is good. She's also going to get plus 12 luck, so there's that luck coming from it, and she's going to get plus 10% crit rate with her torpedo weapons. All really good things. Let's move on to skill number 1, which is also boosted by her augment module. So her augment module put in a lot of work here. Okay, 5 seconds after entering the battle, she's going to surface and initiate a secret barrage. Enemies hit by this barrage are inflicted special burn, and it lasts for 20 seconds along with scaling with her torpedo stat. During the time that she surfaces from this skill, she is going to take 1 damage for the first 3 instances of damage, so this is going to kind of help make her survive while she's, above the water for this skill. It makes it so she's less vulnerable. Of course, she can still take damage after those first 3, and with 2000 HP, that is a little concerning, but she's not likely to die because, she's going to take 1 damage for the first 3 instances of damage. She's also going to regenerate her oxygen by 10 per second that she's up there, so that's interesting. So she's going to have more oxygen due to this skill, and then she's going to submerge again, and she's going to be a normal submarine after that. Kind of interesting though, because she is going to allow herself to be submerged longer by getting the extra oxygen. It's certainly a unique aspect of this skill. Additionally, this skill skill says that when the enemy is inflicted damage by this skill's special burn, that she gets crit damage plus 20%. So I guess that might be the ninja theme here, is just kind of the crit damage and the critting and the luck associated with that. But generally, this is a much better skill than just surfacing and hitting a barrage. So you definitely want this augment module. Skill number 2 reads that she gets a plus 10% boost to her torpedo stat, which is going to be needed because her stats are a little bit lower, similar to how the U-boats have stats a little bit lower and they get boosted by skills. Also, when the ship retreats from battle, she fires a special barrage and removes any burns on ships in your fleet. That's actually really cool. I would have liked if it was on launch or there was some way to time it better, but you can literally have her be your anti-heal call-in. So if you're getting burned a lot, there's something that's burning you and your fleet is taking a lot of damage from that, you call her in as a sub, and then when she leaves, she's going to heal all that burn. That's actually kind of cool. I really like that in certain burn heavy maps. I like this sub actually a lot. It has a lot of fun things going on. It's got unique surfacing mechanic, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be detrimental to what it's doing. You know, subs really like to crit, and she has this really unique kind of anti-burn portion that could be helpful in a bunch of different worlds. So as far as the subs go, I think she's cool. I mean, subs are not a great mechanic, but as far as subs go, I like her. All right, let's move back into a gacha ship. That is the SR aircraft carrier Yumi. Stat-wise, she looks pretty bad. I mean, not necessarily bad, but she just doesn't hold a candle to any of the aircraft carriers that have been released recently, and even some of the ones that are a little bit older, like even Essex, like her aviation stats a little bit low there. She continues the Senran Kagura theme of having absurdly high luck, and then her augment module comes in and gives her an additional 7 luck, so she's at 99 luck with them combined. She's also going to get hit stat and reload increased by 15%. That's actually pretty significant there. Additionally, she's going to get 15 hit stat and 40 aviation stat from her augment module, so those are really nice too. Before we move into skills, we want to talk about her loadout, which is a 3-2-3, which is a little bit better in my opinion than a 3-3-2, which is the standard loadout. Although I always used to give things crap for having that third fighter. I always used to like, you know, having additional dive bomber or torpedo bomber over the fighter. Although these days, fighters have some pretty good options in rocket fighters, and in certain game modes, they're almost essential, like in the later worlds with, you know, ACV value and things like that. So honestly, 3-2-3 loadout is not bad either. Her first skill is going to be upgraded by the augment module, and the upgraded version reads she gets 15% aviation stat boost. Also, when she launches an airstrike, she's going to have a secret ninja barrage, and every enemy hit by this barrage is going to get a snow dance stack, which slows the enemy by 30% for 2 seconds, and it's going to potentially freeze the enemy depending on how many stacks it has. So for every stack that's on there, there's a 20% chance that is going to freeze them instead of slowing them. So the first one has a 1 in 5 chance, but the 5th airstrike that hits, in theory, if it's the same enemy, is going to be guaranteed. So this is a really budget janky slow. I mean, the slow is guaranteed, I guess, but the freeze isn't. I don't love this, to be honest. I don't know, 5 times? If you have an enemy that you're airstrike launching 5 times on, like, I don't know, I guess that's all you need to guarantee it, and you could still proc it on the first time, but like 1 in 5 chance. I don't like this skill, actually. Let's move on to the next one. When this ship falls below 50% HP in the battle, okay, that's interesting. She's a backliner, so hopefully you aren't having below 50% HP. Usually it's the vanguards that have triggers on low HP, because your backline, you're really struggling if it's below 50% HP, honestly. Anyway, when that triggers, she's going to heal 20% HP. That's one of the largest heals I've ever seen, and on a backliner, raw heal wise might be one of the largest heals in the game. That's a big heal. So interesting. Big heal though. She's also going to clear her detection gauge, so she's going to become a hidden carrier again, so she's going to hide again, and then she's going to fire a special barrage, and it can only trigger once per battle. Okay, this skill's not that great either. Not great at what she needs to do. Honestly, Yumi is not that great of a ship. She's kind of a disappointment. I don't love the idea of putting her with Asuka, and I didn't really like Ikaruga as well, so that's kind of rough. Homura was interesting, but Asuka's still looking for a friend here, and I think we only have one other SR, and then we're moving to elites. All right, let's take a look at the SR battleship Fubuki. Stat-wise, she actually looks pretty decent. I mean, she's not going to be compared to any of the UR battleships that have been releasing lately, but as far as an SR battleship, her stats are pretty decent. She focuses more on firepower than her health, and so, more damage related, but that's fine. I mean, if we compare her to the last SR battleship that was released, which I believe was our Wari, she seems pretty much on par. She's got a little bit less health, a little more firepower. She loses a little bit battleship gun efficiency. She's, around the same range. With the exception of maybe luck, which she has a massive amount, similar to her friends. With her augment module, she's going to have 99. Her augment module is also going to give her 30 firepower and 20 reload. Also, when she goes below 50% HP, she's going to get 10% more firepower stat until the end of battle, and that procs once, obviously. So she actually got a skill from her augment module that's kind of neat. All right, let's move on to her skills. Skill number 1, she takes 8% less damage taken. That's actually pretty nice. It's going to help with her survivability at being only 8k HP compared to, a little bit higher levels in more recent battleships. Also, it's going to deal 15% more damage to heavy armor enemies. So that's really nice, especially in those battleship shootouts. Enemies hit by this ship's main guns are going to have a reduction to their stats of firepower, torpedo stat, and aviation stat by 8% for 8 seconds. So she has a debuff when she hits with her main guns. Unless she has a reduction in her cooldown, that's going to be hard to be relevant though, since she's going to fire, they're going to arc, and then by the time they hit, the enemy probably can fire as well. I mean, obviously in PvE, you can time it differently. It's okay. She's also going to deal 60% more damage the first time she fires a salvo. That's a massive amount. And that is going to stack on top of her heavy armor buff as well. So if you're fighting a heavy armor enemy, you are going to deal a massive amount of damage on her first salvo. Also, when this ship is afloat, the Vanguard fleet is going to get plus 10% anti-air and reload, and the flagship is going to get plus 5% damage dealt. That's really cool. It obviously can trigger on herself too, but it can trigger on anyone. You could put this in a fleet with Musashi as the flagship and just get extra damage there. That's a super cool buff, and the Vanguard fleet those are interesting stats to put together and to buff, but I'm not going to complain about those. So she's got a nice universal buff. She's got damage reduction. She's got a huge 60% damage increase. This is a great first skill on top of being a decent base stat battleship. So far so good. Let's see what the second skill is. The second skill is actually upgraded by the augment module, so we'll read that one. She's going to get plus 15% firepower and hit stat. That's great. When the ship fires her main gun, she's going to have a 100% chance to fire a secret ninja barrage. So yeah, that's going to be nice that she has 100%. Enemies hit by this barrage 5 times will be inflicted special armor break. Okay, and they're going to take 5% more aviation damage until the end of battle. Aw, okay, that's so sad. I thought it was going to be more damage, but more aviation damage on a battleship. I mean, she might be in fleets that are no aviation damage at all. Like a triple battleship fleet, I feel like would not be a bad option for her. I wish that was just damage. The 5 times is going to be based on the fact that the barrage actually can hit a bunch. It has all these little spikes and each one can hit, and so it shouldn't be too difficult to trigger that. I'm not sure if it's going to trigger every single time because, it depends where the enemy is and how many hit, but you could probably trigger it pretty often. But the armor break being only for aviation damage kind of is a bummer. I mean, it's better than nothing, right? The augment module only increases the chance that this barrage triggers, but the barrage, I mean, we like the barrage for damage, but not necessarily the armor break is not as good as I would hope. That's probably the biggest disappointment of this ship, but this ship's actually pretty good itself. I would say this is a key target for pairing with Asuka if you're going to run Asuka, and then, I don't know, where you're picking the third one. I guess Homura is probably, I mean, the subfleet doesn't matter, but This ship's actually pretty decent, especially if you're a new player and you don't have a target barrage battleship. This is a great option for you. I would say she's probably the biggest pickup for this event, but, you know, obviously not necessary. There are UR battleships that are leagues better than her, but for an SR battleship, she's pretty good. All right, let's move on to the last two. They're both elites. We're going to start with Murasaki, which you can obtain in the milestone rewards. Light carriers are pretty weak usually, especially when they're elite. Her stats are pretty awful, and her augment module doesn't help that much there. Usually I always say augment modules are, you know, a lock. You need to add them to your ship, but this augment module decreases her luck. Like, I'm not seen that on an augment module before. I guess her luck is over 100, so she goes back to 99, which all of her friends are at 99 with their augment modules, but the fact she has 105 luck is kind of funny, and then you put an augment module to decrease it. So that was just kind of really weird, I guess. I don't know. Maybe there's some lore behind it. Let me know in the comments if you know why they did that. But stat-wise, you know, she's awful, and she's going to get anti-air stat from her augment module. Great. I mean, aviation as well, and she gets a 5% boost and evasion as well, but yeah, she's terrible. Let's move on to the skills and just hope the skills make her worth running. Skill number 1 is going to give her plus 10% stat for her aviation and her anti-air. Okay. Also, at the start of the battle, she increases the ship's detection gauge by 15 points, so she's easier to find. She's so big that, like, she can't hide. Okay, that's bad. That's a bad thing, but okay, cool. Her first skill is literally just bad. Then 20 seconds after the start of the battle, she randomly marks an enemy unit. When that enemy dies, she gets to heal 15%. Okay, so at best, she gets a 15% heal every 20 seconds. That's actually pretty decent, but it is when an enemy dies. It's random. Okay, it could be useful in mobs, I guess, to heal her up a bunch, but only her. So, I mean, and she's not good anyway, so why we care if she lives? Anyway, skill number 2 is enhanced by the augment module. Her first airstrike reload time is reduced by 45%. That's actually pretty nice. That's only part of the augment module, so I guess you have to lose your 6 luck to get that. Probably worth it. Definitely worth it. Also, when this ship is alive, if the main fleet ship takes damage 5 times, that's any main fleet ship, including her, she's going to gain a stack. When this ship launches an airstrike, she consumes the stack, so like takes it off, and she does a special ninja barrage, and then enemies hit by this barrage are going to be poisoned and take damage over time for 105 damage per second for 20 seconds. Okay, that's actually not that bad. That's like 2,000 damage. I guess this is decent. The fact that it has a cooldown reduction is nice. The fact you have to take damage 5 times from a main fleet ship is kind of weird. Murasaki sucks, so I guess we'll just say that and move on to the next one. All right, Yuyaki is the final ship of this event. She is an elite heavy cruiser, and unlike the other heavy cruiser in this event that actually sucks, she is not a torpedo heavy cruiser, so that's a good start. She ironically has higher main gun efficiencies than the other heavy cruiser in this event, but the rest of her stats are pretty bad, as expected. Let's move on to the skills. Oh, I almost forgot. Her augment module gives her 99 luck too. And some other skill about, you know, equipped guns hitting an enemy, 10% chance to reduce damage, blah, blah, blah. Let's move on skills. Skill number 1 is enhanced by the augment module. We're going to read that. When the ship's main gun or secondary gun hits an enemy, and that's going to be a lot because she is a normal heavy cruiser, there's a 20% chance she's going to increase her firepower and reload by 5%. That stacks a max of 3 times for 15%. That's actually not too bad since, you know, it doesn't expire, so it's not like it lasts for 10 seconds. You can just keep going. So if you trigger them early, you just get to have the rest of the battle with the buffs. When she hits the max stacks, so that is the, you know, the 3 stacks that we talked about, she's going to do a special ninja barrage, and then she's going to get plus 10% main gun damage dealt for the rest of the battle. And then whenever skill 2 barrage procs, skill 1 barrage will also proc alongside it. All right, well, we haven't got to skill 2 yet, but this is interesting. So basically, she's going to fire fire a bunch of her guns. When she hits enough times, she will get 3 stacks. She'll fire a very special barrage and get extra damage that she deals. And then that barrage doesn't trigger by this skill because it triggers once per battle when she hits the final stack. However, whatever happens in skill 2, which we'll go read right now, can also trigger it. All right, skill 2 is going to give her plus 15% hit stat, and then every 4 shots fired from her main guns, not the, additional destroyer gun, she's going to fire a additional main gun salvo. That's cool. So she basically has a main gun plus 3 every 4 shots, I guess. So she's going to fire 5 shots when she normally should fire 4, so like a 25% damage increase. Plus it's going to help her trigger her stacks easier. So that's actually really cool in theme with skill number 1. She's also going to fire a special barrage when this happens. So every 4 shots, she's going to get an additional shot, and then she's going to trigger that skill 1 barrage if you've stacked up your main gun shots and you've maxed up that stacks. So honestly, this is kind of interesting. This one's not too bad, honestly. I mean, her base stats are not very good, and she seems very, very squishy, but, her skills actually have a lot of synergy with each other, and I can see a cohesive theme here. I actually like this ship. I'm not going to use her. She's not that good, but I actually like the design features they went with here. I think it's interesting. You put this on, some good stat body, and we'll be talking. All right, that's it. Other than the skins and things like that, obviously we're going to have rental skins, and we have a bunch of new skins. There's a Takao skin. But other than that, that's going to be all the ships. And, I forgot to mention, these default skins are going to have the ability to turn them into their damaged form. So in the original game of this collab, if you take damage, your clothes come off. And so they made a damaged clothes version of these default skins, and you swipe up and down to switch between them. Kind of interesting. So I don't think they apply when you buy a skin. So if you buy a new skin, you don't get the cool little feature, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of cool coming from the original game. And all we have left at this point is the equipment. So let's move on to the equipment. There are 3 of them. All right, the first equipment is going to be the Ninja Master Badge. This is going to give plus 35 anti-air and 30 hit stat at level 10, and then at level 13 it's going to give 44 anti-air and 36 hit stat. Also, it's going to change the background music, so that's really exciting. I love these because, it gives you a reminder of this event. It's also not a bad stat item. It's going to be very similar to the Muse event mic items, so, pick this up, especially if you like the background music. I'm excited to see what tunes they got for this item. All right, moving on, we are going to have the Ninja Costume, which is going to be your standard collab event HP item. So it's SR, it's going to give 550 HP at level 10, 640 at level 13, and that's really cool. Those are actually going to be useful for destroyers and all sorts of content with, EX modes where hit stat and evasion stat don't matter. They're auto hits and things like that. So, you're always going to need these. I have plenty from past collabs, but this is a good one. Also, ships equipped with this will be considered Senran Kagura faction ships, and the additional faction still applies. This is actually very good because Asuka needed someone. Fubuki was good, and Asuka can work with her, but she needs 3, including herself. So now you can actually just put this on anyone in your fleet, and you can have an actual fully buffed Asuka without using the bad ships. So this is probably a really good buff for Asuka, and I believe this is the gacha thing. I remember watching, clips of this game, and I believe this outfit comes from the gacha, so that's a nice little Easter egg from there. So yeah, pick up this item. You're going to need it if you want to run Asuka. Additionally, we have the Ninja Scrolls, which are going to give 25 hit stat and 17 firepower stat at plus 10, 29 hit stat, and 20 firepower stat at plus 13. When it's equipped by a Senran Kagura faction ship, then 30 seconds after the start of the battle, she fires a special barrage from the lead Vanguard, and the damage scales off the ship's firepower stat. And if the equipment is carried by a submarine, you fire this barrage immediately upon battle entering. So that's interesting. But it's a firepower. It's a firepower based barrage. The barrage will be super weak on a submarine. I don't I don't know how I feel about that. Part of me thinks, oh, you can pair this with the costume. You can put that on a Tempesta ship. Tempesta ships are, in the submarine faction. And then you can literally use the firepower of your submarines. And then I realized that Tempesta ships are not submarines. They're in the submarine fleet, but they're frigates. And so I don't believe this would trigger. I mean, you can put it on her and you can give her the firepower boost, which, the Tempesta ships might appreciate, but you're not going to get any benefit from the early barrage. So I don't know. When I first saw this and I was like, oh, that's super cool. You can put it with the costume. You can put it on a Tempesta ship. Like the two items together literally are a Tempesta buff, which is cool because we just got that event. But it doesn't work that way because they're not submarines, even though they're in the submarine fleet. All right. Actually, all these items are kind of cool. Definitely pick them up. It's better to have them and not need them than need them and not have them. But they are all actually pretty unique to this event. So I would say you should definitely pick these up. They're not bad. Putting these on your fleet are not bad. I was super excited about that one combo potential. All right, overall for this event, I think it's totally optional event, which is how collab events should be. I think Asuka's decent. I think Fubuki's decent. I think the rest of the ships are kind of collectible only. I mean, Homura maybe better than average, but it's a submarine, so you only need 3 submarines, and there's definitely 3 better submarines than them. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the items are cool. Definitely pick up the items. It'll get you a bunch of, extra equipment, but if you're low on cubes, we got a UR event coming next month, and this is definitely not the event to be wasting them on. But if you're a collection warrior, this is certainly fine to use your cubes on. There's some interesting tactics here, especially if you're a fan of the series. If you're going to run Asuka and Fubuki, those two will definitely be good enough for newer players to get through content. So, it gets you started off. And the other ships, their collection. So have fun with them. New skin mechanic is interesting, I guess. Have fun today, and I'll see you guys. I'll probably stream this event during the weekend because obviously it is a holiday where I'm at, so I won't be streaming it immediately when this server comes out, but I'll probably stream this event this weekend. Hopefully you guys can join me there. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. Take care. Until next time, toodaloo.